They threw us down to the floor. They pointed their large caliber weapons at our faces and at our heads. I could see my 14-year-old son going through the same terrifying experience that I was going through. My son was yelling, "Daddy, Daddy," and there was nothing I could do. At that point, we were being held down and bound. I could hear one of them calling, "Send them in, send them in." I didn't know what was going on. My child and I, we were asleep when we were dragged out of our beds. As I was being held down, I smelt something in what I believe appeared to be alcohol on the breath of one of the officers. I wanted to say something, but I was scared. I didn't know if I was going to make it out of there alive, let alone my son. I have regretted not saying nothing at that time. Later, I find out via ABC News this officer is arrested for a DUI. As the officers continued to yell out, "Send them in! Send them in!" it became clear who they were talking about. There was a vehicle parked around the corner of our home, filled with civilians, private citizens. Later, we found out uh, they ended up being Walmart loss prevention agents, a whole team of them. They stormed our home and they performed the officers' duties. Whether or not alcohol played an important role in this matter is unknown. What is known is that these officers put my family's safety at risk, including the public. During the raid, they uh, they ripped out all of our smoke detectors. I've never seen such behavior in my life. When Walmart and the officers were done rummaging through our home, afterwards, my wife and my child were told that it was safe to go back into their home. My wife and child, they didn't know that they would be re-entering a home with no smoke detectors, let alone officers leaving marijuana in the home, endangering my child, my wife, my entire family, including the neighborhood. These officers knew I was going to complain about this incident. I was outraged. And then all of a sudden, one after one, officers claim, they allege, they started finding marijuana in my home. According to the police reports, in multiple locations. Now all of a sudden they don't seize it, they don't make an arrest for it, they don't tag it into evidence. It never makes it to the sheriff's station. Instead, what does this team of officers do? They come back days later with a CPS agent in order to claim the marijuana in which they left inside our home, leaving us to live in our house for days, endangering our child, mind you, and us. And they had the audacity not to tell us that we would be re-entering a home that would have drugs in it. Instead, they tried to form a CPS case in order to ruin my character, our credibility, and eliminate the possibility of the complaint. They knew I was going to be filing a complaint. This is how they left our home after they raided What kind of mechanism would cause someone to behave in this manner? They never came back to clean up after themselves. I believe officers should be tested for substance abuse before conducting a search warrant. It was quite obvious that this team of officers here had someone else perform their duties. Whether substance was a major factor in this role, I don't know. What I do know is that there were some very undertrained people searching our home, violating our rights, violating our privacies, and they obviously didn't know what they were doing. So I filed a police report with the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, and they had the nerve to send an officer who was involved to investigate not only himself, but his fellow officers who were involved at the scene. My complaint focused on the thefts that occurred during the raid. When I got back home, naturally we had to start our cleaning up process. And one of the first things I recognized was a yellow box that was sitting, way out of position. So I go to pick it up and I felt it was light. I open it and there are two phone numbers on a sheet of paper belonging to a Officer Hamilton and an Officer Rhodes. And my watch was gone. I mean, these are the kind of things or games or tactics that is being played within the Temecula Sheriff's Department. And I want to make absolutely clear, the public needs to know that the DA's office, handled by Paul Zellerback, was absolutely aware of this, and they chose to do absolutely nothing. And it gets worse. Now we're getting announcements made on Craigslist, threats, some terrorists, some homosexual, some directed at my son, some directed at me. We complained to the DA's office, and once again, they chose to do absolutely nothing. But I fought back. I went ahead and I subpoenaed all of the Craigslist threats that were in my possession. And we're going to get to the bottom of this. If the DA's office, handled by Paul Zellerback, is refusing to accept responsibility in protecting the safety of my family, my child, in which I believe our race has something to do with this issue, according to all of the stuff that we've been through, then I will get the FBI involved. I will go to the Attorney General. I will go all the way to the top until justice is served in a court of law. So understand this. You can continue to park outside our home. You can continue to drive by our home, but we will not be intimidated. We're not just fighting for our rights. We're not fighting for our safety, but we are fighting for county residents' rights and safety too. If we don't stop this now, can you imagine how many more homes that Walmart loss prevention agents could end up raiding within the next few years? And what's next after that, Mr. Sniff? Will you have a toy store? Will you have a taco shop kicking down doors, performing your officer's duties? No, this is a major, major complaint, a major lawsuit that needs to be put on awareness. We need to stop. We can't have private citizens going into resident homes performing the duties of your officers. Public safety is at risk at that situation. I end my mini diary by asking two questions. Paul Zellerback, Sheriff Sniff, what would you do if officers left drugs in your home and your child was present? Would you allow an officer to investigate himself and fellow officers after you filed a complaint? I never asked for much. The only thing I ever asked was for your sheriff's department or the Temecula Sheriff's Department to act responsibly, accordingly, and with dignity within the color of the law. My main concern was, how did those drugs end up in our home? And why were there so many different locations it was found in, and these drugs mysteriously disappear, but yet they're in police reports? Those were not our drugs. I want to make that clear. Somehow they ended up at the scene. And that's all I have to say. The rest we'll just have to figure out in a court of law once I get everyone on a witness stand and have the attorneys or what have you start questioning them there. The truth will come out.